Charlie and the IHP students make their first attempt at solving the Cold War. Elsewhere, the Cold War solves a refugee African prince's romantic woes. What a country! Battle of the Network shows. Join Rick Brooks and Mike Kogel as they explore the TV of the 70s and 80s through hand-picked episodes of their favorite and not-so-favorite series.
Welcome to another Battle of the Network shows. I'm Mike.
And I'm Rick. Hello, everyone.
And today we're going to be talking about two classroom sitcoms. And one of these was, a listener request, wasn't it?
Yes, I want to give a shout out to friend of the show, Jim, who suggested we talk about Head of the Class a while back, and we're finally getting around to it. So thanks, Jim, for supporting the show. Thanks for listening, and we'd love to hear your comments in response to our episode and about the series as a whole. So Jim and anybody else, good place to do it is in our Facebook group.
Exactly. And always a good place to request
shows
or suggest shows. And we're going to be pairing that with the syndicated sitcom What a Country.
Yeah, about the same time, actually. 1986, 1987 is when these shows, well, I guess they both debuted in 1986, but yeah, What a Country only lasted 1 year, but it was syndicated to stations around the country and starred our favorite Yakov Smirnoff.
Is he our favorite Yakov Smirnoff, or is he our favorite?
Our favorite Yakov Smirnoff.
Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Yes. In case there was another Yakov Smirnoff.
Yeah, no confusion intended here.
Yes. It turned out they have a lot in common.
They really do. They both share the classroom setting.
Mm-hmm.
Although Head of the Class is about high school, and What a Country is a citizenship class. So it's adult learners, immigrants working towards their citizenship. And actually, I'd kind of forgotten, maybe shame on me, but I'd forgotten that in Head of the Class, Charlie, Howard Hessman, teaches history. I kind of thought he was more of a general teacher.
How often does he teach history, though?
Maybe that's why I forgot that he teaches history.
Because really, he's teaching them how to be human beings.
Yes, he's teaching them life skills.
Yeah.
About the human condition.
Right. And, I mean, it's weird because when you're watching it, in my memory of watching it, it feels like that's the only class they're ever in.
Yeah. Even though it really does.
The bell rings and stuff, but, that's the only one that somehow that, I guess that's the one gifted class or something.
Right. It's like their home base.
Yeah.
I always kind of thought of it as like, well, at least it should be their home room. And maybe they leave to go, but they touch base there and then they go maybe to other classes, but they come back or for history. I don't know.
Yeah. I think it is, at least in the pilot, it was first period. But then, what is he doing the rest of the day? Is he teaching, regular kids and dumb kids?
I have no idea. I don't remember them ever explaining that.
Right. Does he even care about them?
Yeah.
Is it just these geniuses?
Well, I guess it's a pretty good gig. He gets to do one period a day, and then he can pursue his acting and theater pursuits the rest of the day, I guess.
Right. He seems a little old to be pursuing it.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's never too old.
I think Mr. Moore would urge you that, always pursue your passions, no matter what the circumstances may be.
Yes, even if that passion means having a rat tail.
Yeah.
But he's not the coach of, they're on the academic Olympiad team.
Right.
And he seems just vaguely involved in that.
Yeah. He's
the principal is the coach.
Yeah, he's interested in the kids' lives and making their lives better, but he really seems detached from, he's not in school politics or the inner workings of the school or anything. It just seems like he has these conversations with the assistant principal or the principal, but otherwise you're right. What is he doing? What's his presence in the faculty?
Right. I bet if he does go to faculty meetings, he's a real wrench in the works.
Yeah. Yeah. He's the kind of guy that they have the standard agenda for what they're going to cover, or he goes to school board meetings. I could see him and well, wait a minute, and them expecting just pass a bunch of things, and he keeps asking questions about everything.
Yeah. But in his casual way.
Yeah.
With the kids, he'll ask them a question, and then they'll do something which will foil Dr. Samuel's, the principal's, plans.
Right. He plants suggestions and things that he hopes that they will run with.
Yeah.
Much like, and What a Country, the beloved teacher
Taylor,
who is similarly manipulative. Actually, I don't know if he is.
I don't know if he is.
He really just seems to be teaching class.
Yeah. Now,
within the class, that is.
Yes. What they do have in common is they both started as substitutes.
Yes, they weren't supposed to be permanent teachers.
Right. And somehow became permanent teachers or long-term substitutes. I'm not sure how Charlie's deal worked.
Right. And What a Country, I mean, he was actively does not want to be a full-time teacher.
Right. He just wants to be a coach.
Yeah. That was kind of odd.
He came to L.A. to be a coach.
To be a high school coach, or to be a school coach, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was a school coach.
Yeah.
That's not a I don't know.
I mean, is it a community college or?
I think it's adult education.
Adult education at some kind of like campus facility that they're using. Yeah.
I don't
I think we're missing the main point of the show, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, so head of the class, it's like in What a Country, they both have like the class consists of kind of like stock character types.
Right.
You've got these egghead kids, that have their own like cliches and from a variety of cultures too. And same in What a Country, you have these immigrants that are playing up ethnic stereotypes and naive about the ways of America and everything.
I don't know if any of them would qualify as eggheads.
No, I don't think so. They seem to be accomplished in their own ways in their own lands, but not necessarily geniuses.
Yeah.
Whereas in head of the class, you've got an 11-year-old that is Harvard ready or something like that. And
her parents are just making her go to high school for her growth.
Yeah. Did you watch these shows when they were on? You did, right? You watched Head of the Class.
Head of the Class I watched. It might have been off and on, but a decent amount.
Right.
Like I was telling you, I at least remembered watching a little bit when Billy Connolly took over, and I remember, Rain Pryor being on it and some things. But, most of what stands out is sort of the original characters and Howard Hesseman.
Yeah.
Charlie. I remember liking it then.
Yeah.
At least enough to watch it, but
yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think I was a big fan of the show, but I do remember watching it sometimes. I thought that I liked the Howard Hesseman character, but I just wasn't really into the show that much.
Right.
And some of the students, yes, I might have been interested in them at that age. But yeah, it was a Tuesday night show. Or no, I'm sorry, it was a Wednesday night show, and then it moved to Tuesday for that last season with Billy Connolly. And it was kind of in the middle of some like the family shows and everything, like the episode we're going to talk about, Perfect Strangers, was right before it.
Yeah.
And I had kind of an on and off relationship. I might watch it sometimes, but I wasn't like a fan of that one either. So it would be easy for me to skip Head of the Class, basically.
Yeah, I think I was probably watching both of those. Maybe not all the time.
Right.
Enough.
Now, What a Country, I do remember watching that sometimes.
I just remember it existing. I don't remember.
Yeah, well, I was kind of fascinated, and I still am for some reason, by these like off-network, first-run syndication sitcoms. We kind of touched on this when we talked about Turner Broadcasting System, but I watched a version of this episode with commercials. It's aired on, of course, my favorite station, WPIX in New York, and they had an ad for One Big Family with Danny Thomas.
Yes.
So that was the kind of thing. And Small Wonder would be on around this time. But it seemed like there's this whole phenomenon in the mid-'80s around this time of like these big companies trying to put together and come up with original content for their stations, I guess, to help compete with networks or whatever. But
and like this is some weird co-production of Tribune and
yes,
Viacom.
Which owned WPIX at the time. So I guess the thinking is, well, we've got these big stations, so right away we can get this cleared in X% of the country. And we've got a built-in potential audience.
And they owned WGN too, right?
I think, yeah. So. And one of the big stations in Los Angeles. So So there you go. You got New York, Chicago, LA covered right off the bat.
And WGN was, I know you didn't have it, but it was on a lot of cable channels.
Yeah.
And WPIX, I mean, you were getting that half a state away.
Right. So it had big reach, but I guess it didn't quite connect because it only lasted 26 episodes in 1 year.
And based on the title, it seems like a Yakov Smirnoff vehicle.
Yeah.
And yet, the couple episodes I watched, I mean, he was important to it, but it's more an ensemble.
Yeah, and Yakov Smirnoff was kind of a big deal back in the time. He's not as well known today, but he was in commercials. He was on Night Court sometimes, and he was like a Cold War comedian, Russian who would make jokes about rather gentle jokes about the difference between Russia and the United States.
And they were sort of organized, kind of like the Jeff Foxworthy's "You Might Be a Redneck."
Yeah, that's a good comparison.
He would say, usually would he say what, like in America we would call it this, in Russia we would call it, or was it the reverse of that?
Yeah, I think it would usually be America first, and then Russia, and then would kind of invert the something, or
Right, but somehow it ended with "What a Country."
Yeah. With his patented laugh and his trademark line, "What a country! What a country!"
Right.
Well,
and I mean, one, I know, I forget the story, but I did hear an interview with him on WTF where he talked about, just getting out of Russia and all of that. And certainly that was an ordeal.
Yeah.
And to be able to build that career, I mean, you got to admire what he did. And of course, the savvy of near the end of the Cold War to use that to his advantage.
Yeah.
That's smart.
I mean, and I think one thing that links this is thematically the episode of Head of the Class kind of deals with Russia and the Cold War, and it's kind of hanging over What a Country. Although What a Country is not really concerned with geopolitical affairs, I would say it's pretty basic sitcom.
Yeah.
But it kind of takes me back, like watching these two. I mean, one thing you would think maybe in this podcast, if we were going to get into like the Cold War, we would do The Day After or something like that. But no, we've decided to do Head of the Class and What a Country. But I think it's worth mentioning, that this is 1986, 87. That's a couple of years after. But I can remember like having a whole unit about Russia, and I guess it was probably 1985, maybe 1986. But we would have like these thematic units. Like I think in fifth grade was the year we had like a big Russia unit, and we'd see films, and it was a big deal. I mean, the threat of nuclear war was still hanging over everyone. You had Reagan, Gorbachev, but Russia was still seen as the enemy.
Yeah.
And the Cold War was still in pretty full effect right now, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, and yet only a few years away from the beginning of the end.
Right. And it was also a big thing to have exchanges like this.
Yeah.
It was common fodder for sitcoms to have like people come over for, in this case, an academic competition ahead of the class, or chess players coming over, or you would have episodes where some diplomat would come over to the United States and be stuck for some reason. There'd all be these comic misunderstandings. And I think the shows sort of like a lot of times TV would try to have a message about peace and sort of like humanize and normalize the quote unquote enemy.
Yes.
And I think Head of the Class definitely does that.
Because as Sting told us,
yes,
the Russians love their children too.
That's right. Yes, that was very wise. Very wise.
Yes.
Now, Yakov Smirnoff, it could be seen as kind of like humanizing, but a lot of Yakov Smirnoff's humor was about how terrible it was in Russia.
Yeah, it was actually like about confirming
yeah.
American beliefs about,
yeah,
not about the people, but about the situation.
Yeah, and I think like the big thing is like to especially like kids growing up in the 80s and learning about Russia from sitcoms and dramas and stuff. Not necessarily like, they've got nuclear warheads aimed at us, but that they're very rigid. There's no freedom. They're humorless. It's a surprise if they do have a sense of humor. They're into, they mock America. They think they're superior and everything like that.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the big stereotype of Russia.
Right. Some of those he would confirm.
Yeah.
But also like the lack of food and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's something that was kind of like something that we learned a lot in school, like, that they have like these major issues and here's the people are mistreated and everything. Now, yeah. I don't want to get into like a political thing here. I mean, you could argue that a part of that was like the system, the major United States educational system is, of course, going to tell kids that capitalism is better and that communism is a failing system and people are being abused. Now, I happen to think that's true, and
right.
History kind of proved that to be true. But there was definitely an agenda in all this. But I think the sitcom agenda would be more to just kind of like point out that, hey, the Russians love their children too, and they're humans, and we can all get along, and we're really not so different, us and the Russians.
That's right.
When it comes down to it.
They like red, we like blue. I don't know.
Yeah.
Gray. So, do we want to talk about Head of the Class first?
Yeah, why don't we get to Head of the Class first? There might be a little bit more meat in the bone with Head of the Class, I'm guessing. Is it fair to say?
Just listing all the characters will be.
Yeah, well, might have to make this a two-part episode.
Yeah. So we mentioned Charlie, and of course he's presumably an ex-hippie.
A bit of a maverick, it seems like.
A bit of a maverick.
Now, let me ask you something, because the theme song, here.
Oh, yeah.
Mike here is our resident musicologist on the podcast. So I want to ask you something.
Uh-huh.
What is the technical term for a theme song that starts off very staid and stately and then rocks out and really cuts loose halfway through?
Awesome.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah. I'll go with that.
Yeah. One might say it's shades of prog rock. Just because it starts out like a classical piece, almost like a Mozart.
Yeah.
So very, a lot of notes.
Right.
Very refined, and then and I think on like a real piano and stuff, and then it turns into this rock and synth thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you start seeing like more of Charlie going through the
like New York.
Right? Yeah. You start off with like a stereotype of something like The Paper Chase or some other academic show or something.
Right.
But it's not your ordinary class.
No,
And this is not your ordinary teacher.
that's right.
This is Howard Hessman, who, credibly, Howard Hessman is from that era.
That's
and he
right.
was, he of course, we haven't mentioned, but he was Dr. Johnny Fever on WOKRP. He was in like a left wing or just kind of like a hippie leaning comedy collective in the early 70s. So he's got credibility as that type. So yeah, you can definitely assume that he was a former hippie and everything just by the fact that they cast him.
Yeah, and good theme song.
Yeah.
The version of this episode I watched didn't have it, but another one did. So
yeah, and we turn to generic internet sources because the show is not available for streaming and it's never been on DVD.
Weird.
Yeah,
or maybe not weird.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think who knows if it's music rights, because there's certain episodes that maybe some of the more famous episodes involve music, but I don't see why it would be an obstacle to keeping the whole show off.
Yeah.
Oh, it has been. I think it's been on. I think Antenna TV was showing it for a while, so it's been in syndication and on different cable networks and stuff, but on home video and streaming, not so much.
So he's obviously our main character. He's also our entry character, our Carter from ER or whatever.
Yeah. Right.
He's new to this world of high school.
Mm-hmm.
No, of nerds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other adults are Dr. Samuels, the principal, played by William Schilling, and he kind of amuses me.
The great William Schilling. He does this part with gusto every single time, does he not?
Yeah.
Every scene he's given it his all.
Very pompous and just clueless. Blustery, yes. But with a air of jolly to it.
Yeah.
He's a little bit like Newman.
Yeah, that's a good
jolly.
comparison. He's not menacing.
No.
He's blustery and kind of cranky, a little cantankerous, but there's never like any real menace behind it.
No. Then Bernadette Mira. That name sounds weird, but anyway, the vice principal.
Yeah. Who I always thought that there was some kind of sexual tension, and I guess there is at various points, but I'm not sure if they ever really developed anything between those two.
I don't think they did, yeah. And then we have our students, just reading these in the order I got them from Wikipedia.
Okay.
Maria, who was there for 3 seasons. Not sure what her deal is exactly. Maria Borges.
She's apparently I thought she was like fashion or arts or something like that, or dance or something like that.
And later played one of Tony Soprano's Gumars.
Yes, my girlfriend did not remember that character at all. She remembered like virtually everybody else, but was kind of surprised that she was actually on a couple seasons.
Right. I would say, to me, the next one is after Howard Hessman, the star of the show.
Okay.
Arvid Engen.
Oh, Arvid, yes, the breakout character.
Dan Frischman.
Yes.
The true nerd.
Yeah.
Nerd who knows he's a nerd.
Yeah, and actually, I think he's really good in this role actually because I think he's genuinely funny.
Yeah, I think he's good. And then Darlene, played by Robin Givens, who of course became more famous for her off-screen antics. Her life is now on the Riverdale show, or was. Simone, played by Christine Haj, is the poet, the artsy redhead.
Yeah.
Jawaharlal is from India.
And that's pretty much his character.
Pretty much,
so you're right, yeah.
He was on 3 seasons. Alan, the conservative, pretty boy conservative guy.
Yeah.
Looks a little bit like a young McGinley.
Young Ted McGinley?
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that.
Eric.
Hey, Eric.
Eric. He's a rebel.
Yeah.
He's only in this class because his mom makes him be in the class.
Yeah, I don't want to be with a bunch of eggheads.
He wears a leather jacket.
Yeah.
He reads books.
Right.
Novels. Hangs out with
because he wants to, though, not because he has to.
Exactly. But he's sort of, he's also like he's got a lot of heart.
Yeah.
Underneath all that.
Right. Underneath all that leather.
There is Sarah.
Yeah, she was
a nice girl.
She was not in the pilot, I don't think.
No, but she was in the whole show.
Yeah, but I do remember her as being one of the mainstays.
Yeah. Dennis, the fat guy.
Yeah, and Cynic.
Yes, that's right, Cynic.
And Jawaharlal, I guess he was kind of a kiss-up. That was another part of his character, yeah.
Okay. And Janice, who's the young genius we mentioned. Yeah. And we mentioned on another show episode, appeared on 321 Contact. And then later there were other students, but we don't care about them.
Yeah.
They're not in this episode.
Right.
Billy Connolly, he's not in this episode.
Right. This is more or less the main cast for 4 seasons, and the 5th season was with Billy Connolly. And I was kind of trying to figure out why Howard Hessman left the show, and I didn't get a definitive answer, but I'm going to put this in the show notes. There's a fascinating interview, I think, with maybe the Chicago Tribune or some newspaper where I think he was still on the show, and he was kind of criticizing the show while he was on it.
Oops.
And like kind of the tone was like, yeah, this wasn't really what he signed up for, that they weren't kind of doing the show stories he wanted to do. So you can kind of see why he probably left for creative reasons.
Yeah, maybe those kids were becoming too big.
Yeah, it could be.
Arvid was stealing too many scenes from him.
Yeah, I hope that's not what it was.
I hope that's not it.
And
He probably just I bet he wanted it to be edgier.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was more TGIF kind of.
Yeah, well, yeah. It doesn't take much to be edgier than TGIF.
Right.
As the saying goes, a bowling ball is edgier than most TGIF stuff.
That was Thoreau, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Yeah. Bob Thoreau.
Yeah, Bob Thoreau. I think Bob Thoreau took over for Gary Deeb in Chicago when Gary Deeb went to TV.
Right, and he did the interview with Howard Hessman.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It all works out.
Yeah.
So the deal in this episode is that the Russians are coming to compete in a academic bowl.
That's the name of the episode. The Russians are coming. The Russians are coming. And this is from the first season. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a big academic competition.
Yes.
I guess that was a big thing in the 80s. 1, academic competitions, and 2, people traveling internationally for academic competitions.
I was on an academic team. We did not travel internationally.
You didn't? No. Did anybody
We
from
traveled.
Russia come to visit you?
No. In fact, we didn't. We once went to a college in another town and did some thing there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we appeared on the local TV show and lost.
No. At least you got to be on TV.
Yeah, it was fun.
Is there footage of that anywhere?
I hope not. Could be in the WSB archives, but
Now, did you have people on your team lined up as subject experts, like with specialties and everything like that?
Not really. No.
Oh, okay.
Not quite in the. I mean, there were things people were better at than other people. Like I was not good at math.
Right.
And we only had 4 people on our team.
Okay.
18 or whatever.
Yeah.
And then we had a couple alternates, I think.
That's one of the things that amuses me about this episode is that everybody seems like programmed into their category.
Right. And like if it's not their category, they can't answer it.
Right. They're even though they're geniuses.
Right.
They just can't go outside their lane. And like, well, we'll get into it, I guess. But
yeah.
Jawaharlal gets sick, and they're like, well, no, Jawaharlal's like our world literature guy.
Right.
The only one that knows as much about world literature is Eric.
Yeah. Simone's only read American stuff.
Yeah. Simone's wheelhouse is poetry, American poetry.
Yeah.
So you got to be wondering how many questions about American poetry are going to come up in an international competition. I mean, wouldn't that be kind of unfair to the Russians if they asked a bunch of American poetry questions?
That's why the Russians need their world literature expert. Although it seems the Russians, they take a different strategy based on their responses and their ability to all hit the buzzers at the same time. They're all experts in every field.
Yeah. Well, that kind of seems like a better way to go, actually.
It seems like
Maybe you should get as many people that know as much as possible rather than a bunch of people that know only one thing.
And if somebody knows a little more about one thing than another, that helps.
Right. You have a bunch of generalists.
A more rounded team.
Yeah.
In a baseball team, not everybody has the same skill levels, but you wouldn't want them to only each have one skill level.
No.
One guy who only gets base hits and one guy who only hits home runs.
Not in your starting lineup. You might have some guys on the bench that specialize, but not in your main team.
Right.
And I don't see much leadership on the IHP team either. I mean, there seems to be a little general confusion.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it, that really comes down to Samuels because he's the one running this, and
yeah,
he just seems to be motivated to get everybody to show up for practices and for the thing. But
right.
I question his coaching here.
A lot of those students, they have some social issues and some confidence issues, so it doesn't seem like any of them are leaders.
Correct.
Like maybe Charlie's going to help some of them become leaders. At the end, it seems like one of them is the captain or something, and it's frankly a surprising one. But any of them would have been surprising.
Right. I mean, you'd think the one I would expect, like Alan, to take more of a leadership role.
Yes.
Because of his interest in politics and his general
arrogance.
Yes. But he doesn't seem to be interested in that or interested in or ready for that role.
Right. And Darlene seems a little bit confident, like she could be a leader.
Right. Well, Darlene seems to be like a trivia machine, so I'm surprised that she's not totally dominant at this. And apparently she's not, because as we will get into, like the IHP is getting crushed.
Yeah.
For a long time in this, they're not getting any questions right, and they weren't all about world literature.
No.
Even though, Jawaharlal has, gastrointestinal distress of some time.
Yes.
Of some kind and has to leave the team.
It shakes them to their core.
The IHP is going to compete in this, but early on, right away, Eric is sort of watching from afar as they get ready, but he doesn't want any part of this.
Yeah. His buddy Richie keeps showing up.
Needling him.
Yeah, needling him and about these nerds and stuff. Yeah. So you're seeing that and you kind of see, this episode's going to somehow be about him.
Yeah.
Which, of course, it is.
Yeah, right.
But going in, of course, Samuel's thing is just we got to trounce these guys.
Yeah.
Got to prove that America's better.
Yeah.
And the kids have heard all these crazy rumors about steroids and them being test tube babies.
Yes, and Charlie really laughs this off and mocks it.
And of course, we know the Russians have never used
No.
steroids for competition.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with this episode. I think the show takes a little too lightly. Howard Hessman's character, and by extension the show itself, takes a little bit too lightly the fact that the Russians were juiced to their gills and cheating all throughout, these international competitions.
Were?
Yes, exactly, yes. But Charlie really laughs this off. I mean, he's very casual about it.
Yeah.
Which he makes some good points. He's like, wouldn't it be more interesting to learn about them and see what they're into and all this.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's right at the base of that, and the test tube baby thing is a little bit much.
It was a little extreme, yes.
Hey, I don't know about brain steroids, but
no,
it's
possible that I'll bet they were at a minimum. I'll bet those kids were taking some kind of amphetamine or some kind of substance to keep their energy up on this long trip and during the competition.
It sure seemed like it.
Yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, and then the Russian kids show up, but Dr. Samuels is MIA or something. And anyway, Charlie's like, "Well, just bring them in. We'll let the kids meet beforehand."
Right, to bring them into the classroom, actually.
Yes, yeah. So the Russians come in, and they are very intimidating.
Yeah.
One of them corrects a problem Arvid's doing on the board.
Right.
Math problem.
One of them takes a peek at Dennis's computer, and
yes,
Dennis shuts off the computer right away.
That's right. One of them asks Alan if he's a Yupski.
Yeah, that's right.
But then some of them just seem to be chatting. And
let me say too that sports and this kind of thing was seen as diplomacy. I mean, you had the goodwill games that we've talked about, everything, but it's not entirely out of bounds to imagine that people could be gathering intel, or there could be other purposes on this kind of trip. Both the Russians gathering intel somehow, or another thing that was kind of looming over this was the other big joke that we didn't is defection. Like in here, the idea was like, well, somebody's going to try to defect in our side, but the Russians would be like very paranoid about that happening and presumably would have very tight security. So, there'd be more things going on necessarily than just kids, as innocent as Charlie says. But, I'm just pointing that out.
Interesting. They didn't seem to have security, though.
No, not at all, actually.
That I mean, I guess that wouldn't have fit the idea of the show, but, that could have been intimidating, too, if they had a couple big burly Russian guys.
Right.
Not just the teacher.
Right.
Mikhail. Bald Mikhail.
Yes.
How did they come up with that? And the only student they named is Boris.
Yeah.
How did they come up?
Well,
I always Boris.
It's a pretty common, yeah.
So the kids, the Russian kids leave, and Charlie's like, maybe you should get to know them. And classic sitcom moment is, you'd have to be a raving paranoid to think that they're the enemy.
Yes, and I was watching this with Lori, and right after he said that, I paused it and actually looked at her and go, "Enter Samuels." Unpause it. Samuels comes in. I'm not bragging about that.
No,
but I think we were all thinking it, and
yep.
You're right. It's totally classic moment.
He enters and says, "The enemy has arrived."
Yeah.
And that's when we find out Jawaharlal is sick, and Eric's the only person who could fill in his shoes, and Samuels hates Eric, so he doesn't want that.
Yeah.
And he goes off to convince Jawaharlal to come back. Meanwhile, the kids are like, "Well, we got to get Eric. We got to give him something he wants, and the only thing he wants is Simone."
Yeah.
So they all look at her. I found that very weird.
Yeah.
Luckily, they turned it less weird very quickly.
Yeah.
We just want you to talk to him.
Yeah. She's like, "Oh, no way. I'm not going to." Like, "No, we just want you to talk to him."
Right.
Oh, okay.
But she is supposed to use everything she has.
Mm-hmm.
So, still a little.
Yeah. Her feminine wiles.
Yes.
Definitely.
She does go talk to him, and finally he agrees to do it. But only this one time.
Right.
And he comes back, but then they want him to put on the dumb blazer, and he won't do the blazer.
Yeah, they've got a pretty smart gray and purple color scheme, but he doesn't want to put it on. And
yeah, I understand.
not really being a team player.
It doesn't look comfortable.
No.
He's got a cool jacket.
Yeah.
And they're all mad at him, but then Jawaharlal comes back, and maybe he's fine, and they go off to do it, but Eric and Charlie have one of the many heart-to-hearts they have this episode.
Yeah, it's a lot of interaction.
And he almost says that he would have enjoyed doing it.
Yeah. And you can see that he's a little put off when Jawaharlal comes back in the room. Like, he was kind of embracing the idea of being part of this, and you can see a little rejection in his face, and he's a little hurt that they moved on from him so quickly, too.
Yeah, just proves his point. These nerds aren't his friends.
Yeah.
Of course, in that time, like, their classroom has all these big windows into the hallway, which is bizarre to me, but there might be schools where that's the case. I don't know. And his friend Richie just like stands outside the window and does like a Nelson from The Simpsons.
Yeah.
Laugh.
Right.
I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So they go to the competition, and the man running the competition, I believe, was Mr. Wu from Deadwood.
Oh wow! I did not know
I
that.
forgot to verify that.
Wow,
but,
good catch.
which was exciting. Unfortunately, he spoke clear English and did not swear at all.
Yes,
But it was still
yeah,
nice. And he asks the captains to speak, or someone on the team to speak. So Boris says, something, and then one of the other kids says something to him. And then he says something about Simone being attractive, and then the team is supposed to say something, the American team, and of course Samuels jumps in and tries to Bigfoot them and speak Russian and does a terrible job. So then Janice Bigfoots him and speaks perfect Russian.
right. Yeah, and this is something that stood out to me actually was how do you think Robin Givens felt being on the show and with Simone being positioned as the sex symbol of the show? Like this episode made clear, the tough guy was interested in her and Simone's character and these Russians, because when the guy says that, the guys are all like nodding their head like, you know. So I thought that was kind of interesting that the sex symbol, for lack of a better term, was her and not Robin Givens.
Yeah, that because I thought when he started that, I thought it was either going to be about all of them or Robin Givens.
I mean, now somebody hits on Robin Givens at the end, but I mean, didn't she have like a modeling background, like a legitimate modeling background, and yet maybe she was glad not to be playing on that.
Maybe, yeah.
But I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I thought, well, I thought it should have been someone else, just since we already had put this emphasis on Simone, Eric being into Simone.
Yeah.
Why not have someone else be?
Yeah, it didn't really go anywhere.
Plus, there was a whole lot of the guys and the girls on both teams looking kind of flirting. And
yes, yeah, there was definitely clearly across the room making eyes at each other. And
yeah,
I mean, I guess it'd be one thing if they made Eric jealous or something, or which they didn't really explore that. I think there's another episode I was watching where they sort of hinted at something like that, but this time it didn't really go anywhere. They just threw it in there to get.
And he ended up with one of the Russian girls.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Jawar Halal passes out on his brother.
Yeah,
so
he's not in good shape.
So they have to go without anybody, any world literature.
Yeah, boy.
And yeah, they're getting smoked.
Yeah.
It's like 6-0.
Yeah.
And Eric's out in the hall kind of watching, and some world literature things come up. And
that's my favorite. Answers. That classic thing where he mouths the answer, right, and then grimaces when they don't get it right.
Right.
And proving that he knew it, And,
yeah, and has another conversation with Charlie.
Yeah.
He's like, he wanted to help, but he wanted to help in his way.
Yeah.
Charlie points out when that's not doing a favor. When you do a favor, you do it the way the people need you to.
Yeah, you're all in.
Yeah.
And Charlie is roaming around a lot, by the way.
Well, I mean, he's not the coach.
Yeah. Well, he seemed to be kind of invested in sitting in the audience, but it's kind of odd that he's going out in the middle of the,
smoke break.
Yeah. It's a good call. I think you're right.
Maybe he just can't sit still for too long. Or he could just feel Eric out there.
Yeah. And maybe it's possible he was checking on Jawar Halal too, maybe.
Yeah.
Probably more likely a smoke break.
Jawar Halal, he has food poisoning every other week. Yeah. And of course, Eric really admits the truth. He doesn't want to ruin his reputation. And Charlie's like, for somebody who's so tough, you sure do worry about what other people think about you a lot.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a pretty good.
That was well said.
Yeah. Then they get a question: what Irish playwright writes his plays in French? I said in my head Samuel Beckett, because that's the only Irish playwright I can think of.
Yeah.
The Russians got it wrong. They're the IHP kids. They don't know. And Eric rolls in. He's got his blazer sleeves rolled up.
Yeah.
He's got pins on his blazer. He's got shades on.
Yep.
Doesn't even sit down. Hits the buzzer.
Just in time, too.
Yeah.
There's a countdown clock.
Right. And apparently there are no rules about, you can't have somebody just show up in the middle of it.
Yeah. No, apparently as long as you're wearing a blazer of some fashion, even if it's slightly modified, you count as part of the team, apparently.
Yeah. And, of course, it is Samuel Beckett. He gets it. And then, I think this leads to my favorite part of the episode.
Oh, yeah?
Montage.
Ah, yeah. Excellent montage.
Which there was a Rocky IV reference earlier, so good on them for following through and having a montage.
Yeah, and there's a couple different musical styles I think throughout this montage, but
yeah, I mean similar to the theme song, but definitely kind of a rock thing, and it also gave the writers an out. They didn't have to write any more questions.
Yeah,
just have people hitting buzzers and going.
Yep. Yeah. The montage was fun. Yeah,
it had a few gags in it. There's a Russian guy drinks a glass of water, and then Dennis drinks an entire pitcher of water.
Yeah.
Because he's fat.
Right.
And they get to the end, and it's 52-52. What a comeback.
Yeah, an amazing situation after 104 questions or whatever.
Yeah. I wonder how many were world.
Yeah.
He just gave them confidence, I think.
I think he gave them a spark. They really seem to be rudderless, as we've mentioned, without a lot of leadership, and Eric coming in like that really uplifted them. Let's go with that.
I'm gonna go with it. Yeah. And they have to have a tie. Or no, the last question is, what's the world's most common male name?
Yes.
So the Russians guessed John. That's wrong. IFP guessed Boris.
Yeah, they're all chattering around, and Arvid's like, well, I guess it could be a Russian name. Boris?
Yeah. Turns out it's Muhammad.
Yes.
And then they have the opportunity to go into overtime if the teams want to.
Yes, I hated this part of the show. So the moderator says, like, if both teams agree, and to me that's ridiculous. Like, why would you even have a situation where you leave it open that? No, you should determine that before the competition. Mm-hmm. To me, that was totally absurd. I was actually angered by that. And I was even more angered by what came next.
Well, I'll just say before we get to that, it is an academic competition, which probably means that academics worked out all the rules, and academics are not known for coming to consensus very well.
That's a good point, yes.
So, there was probably a lot, there was somebody arguing your point, and then somebody else argued, well, no, they shouldn't have overtime at all. Overtime is just,
And as a compromise, maybe they just said, well...
If they want to.
Yeah. They probably thought, what are the odds that they'd be tied 52-52 after 2 hours of questions?
Right. Or maybe these had been worked out, as part of the, like the SALT 2 here.
Yeah. This is a big sticking point for a while.
Yes.
I think it was that savvy statesman, Jim Baker, who suggested as an out that they give the students the ability, because originally the Russians were insistent that, a draw would be a draw, especially on American territory. You could argue that a draw on American territory would be a win. Now, I don't really think the Soviets would see it like that. They would a win is a win. But
the Gipper obviously would be in favor of a win.
I would think so.
And Samuels and Mikhail are all about, we got to keep going. We got to compete. So they're about to. And then Dennis, this is a question, like, why is he the one that goes over there?
Yeah.
He doesn't seem like a leader at all.
Yeah. There's some shot it seemed like where he happened to make eye contact with his counterpart or something. And maybe they had some connection. I don't know. But yeah.
And they whisper, and then they decide that they would rather just leave it a tie and go have a party.
Yeah.
You're not.
No, that was lame. Why would you decide to leave it as a tie? And they kind of make it seem like they have Samuels go, well, how we know who has the better system? Which system's better, or who's superior?
Right.
And Charlie's like, well, they're superior, we're better. And kind of laughs it off. But no, that to me that's totally unrealistic. You spend all this time preparing for something, and you could at least see it to a finish, and maybe you could teach the kids a lesson about handling defeat or victory with grace, not just ending in a tie.
But is it? I just thought of this.
Yeah.
Obviously, the episode is a metaphor for the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a metaphor for nuclear deterrence?
Where?
Because if there is a winner, that means there's a loser in that
right.
situation. So it's nuclear deterrence. The idea is it's a constant draw,
right,
with the potential of a winner and many losers.
That's a good point, but I will say that deterrence was based on the principle that each side thought the other one was trying to win.
Oh, that's right.
And without that, the whole system falls apart. Of the mutually assured destruction.
Right.
So, in my opinion, this subverted the whole thing that the negotiators were working for. So it did not succeed on any level, and therefore this episode is a failure. And shame on the IHP for agreeing to this. And I can't believe that the Russians would have done that either. Just because they're lured over here, they see little blue jeans and rock and roll music and apple pie and Coca-Cola, and all of a sudden they're willing to give up their principles.
Meh.
I guess so. And what about Eric? Eric, kind of comes off the bench and to help everybody, and I guess he's cool with this. Apparently he is at the end.
I guess so, yeah, because he's hooking up with that blonde.
Yeah.
Who maybe is defecting.
Yeah.
That might be a joke. But.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess we get a reminder that these are basically high school kids, and they don't really care about some of the stuff I'm talking about. They just, want to hook up with the people on the other team.
What happens at academic ball stays at academic.
Is that so?
Well,
right.
No, I don't think so.
Well, yeah, I didn't like the ending. It was a little cheesy. Not unexpected though.
No.
And I guess their heart was in the right place, maybe.
Yeah.
I hope. Or maybe something else was going on.
They were trying to put over a communist agenda?
You said it, not me.
Well, I said it as a question.
Okay. All right. Yeah. All right. Well, what did you think about this episode?
I thought it was better than the pilot.
Yeah.
But my general feeling of the show, watching the pilot and this one, is that I don't need to go back and revisit this.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of the shows we kind of wind up revisiting and being delighted by them, and some we're just like, "Oh, okay, it's there." I respect it. I mean, it was on 5 seasons,
Sure.
and was fairly successful. Kind of a mid-range, family-friendly,
Yeah.
mild hit.
I don't really think it's I don't think it was targeted at adults anymore.
No,
It was targeted at probably at middle schoolers or maybe high schoolers.
it's very broad, and just little things like, especially if you see like a couple of episodes like in a week, like but like the Simone character, who many of us loved back in the days, but like her character, it's such like a weird character because like she's told to be like shy or something, but like every time somebody says, she does that little thing where she like kind of ducks her head and demurs like every single time, it's just to excess. They're a bunch of like stock character types, and
she, I mean, like this episode, she didn't seem shy at all.
No, she was a little bit more.
She didn't
bold
want
in
to
this
be
one.
pimped out.
Yeah. I can't really blame her for that.
But she had no problem talking with him.
Yeah.
Even though she knew he liked it, that could have been an uncomfortable situation. It didn't seem like it was.
Yeah, and I might be judging things a little bit too much based on that pilot, which, as we know, that's no way to judge a series.
No.
And everybody got a little bit more confident as the show went on. But
yeah, and it did have to do a lot of setting up the show
quickly.
Yeah, and introducing each person's basic behavior.
Right.
I think like the ones that don't seem to have an identifiable thing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, right.
But they don't stand out because there are these other characters like Arvid and even the Darlene character. She was sort of the mean one a little bit or something.
Yeah.
Or she's rich. I don't know.
Yeah, I think she was like the icy cold one or something like that. Well, I mean, Head of the Class may not have won the Cold War, although I think it's worth mentioning that I didn't watch this, but they did go to Moscow in a later season and filmed a two-parter there, and that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So it was a follow-up, and maybe we need to watch that and see if they made any callbacks to this episode. Did you watch those episodes for this?
No. Not for this.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if they used Russian. I think they used Russian actors in that, maybe. It seems a long way to go if you're going to just use American actors.
It sure does. And there had to have been some kind of, I mean, we kind of joked about Reagan administration being involved, but there had to have been some kind of government involvement if they had a sitcom crew filming in Moscow.
Yeah. And actually, though, you mentioning that made me think of one of the other cultural exchanges of that, or not exchange, but when Billy Joel went to Russia. And that theme song, there's a little bit of Billy Joel to it.
Yeah, I can see that.
The classical.
The opening.
But also it'd be going into this sort of rocking.
Yeah, and that kind of synth rock is very reminiscent of some of his, especially some of his 80s rock era. Yeah. Well, Billy Joel is as American as apple pie and baseball.
Wonder if they asked him to show up
on Head of the Class.
He was a substitute teacher and he just performed We Didn't Start the Fire.
Yeah.
People are scrambling to write down notes.
Yeah. Well, many of us learned more about history from We Didn't Start the Fire than in our entire high school careers.
That's right. I think, and of course, again, Sting. I don't think I knew who Khrushchev was before the song Russians.
Yeah, that was kind of Khrushchev's fault. If he would have made himself available when he came over, if he would have been on like I Love Lucy or something.
Right.
He could have had some more exposure.
Yeah, he could have made fun of himself and like banged his shoe on Lucy's coffee table or something.
Now, Gorbachev.
Yeah.
I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't believe while he was premier of the Soviet Union, I don't think he was on a sitcom. Unfortunately. Yeah. But he seems like the kind of guy that, looking back, like, if he had a chance, he probably would have been, if he thought he could get away with it.
Yeah, I remember The Tonight Show.
Yeah. He would have been open to that. Now, you had all kinds of stand-ins for Gorbachev.
Yes.
But Gorbachev himself, I don't think ever made that jump.
Might have been a bridge too far.
You think so? Yeah, probably.
Should we move on?
Yes, let's move on to What a Country.
What a Country.
And so Yakov's character, Yakov Smirnoff's character is Nikolai,
yes,
which is a very common Russian name. You got Boris, you got Nikolai.
Yep.
Maybe Nikita, and other than that,
Alexei.
Yeah, that's good. So he's Nikolai. Who's your favorite citizenship class member on What a Country? Is it Yakov or is it the Hungarian immigrant?
So again, I only watched 2 episodes. I did watch the pilot, and then I watched this one.
Okay.
I did enjoy the Hungarian guy in the pilot.
Yeah, his deal is he's cranky and rips on the other people.
Yeah, and he hates Yakov because he's Russian and Russia invaded Hungary.
Yeah.
I thought that, well, that's a nice detail.
Yeah. And Yakov made a joke about that, like, what does he say? Something like, some people have long memories, or some people hold a grudge, or
Yeah.
and that he was played by George Murdoch, who's kind of a longtime character actor, and I think a lot of the cast, other than Yakov, they weren't necessarily distinguished in a lot of other things. Did I say that politely enough? I think one of the stars of this episode, this particular episode, he's like the son of an African dictator who was deposed.
Right. But he's likable.
Yeah, and he was in Back to the Future, which I didn't recognize him, but he was the guy that played the Chuck Berry's cousin. I forget his actual name, like Marvin Berry or something like that. So that's that guy, maybe his most notable role.
Well, that's a pretty good role.
Yeah.
Straight from that to this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have those guys, and there's Ali, who's from Pakistan.
And played by an Indian, of all things, Vijay Armitage.
Yeah, Vijay Armitage.
Who was a kind of a renowned top 20 tennis player.
Oh.
That's how he became famous, like in the 1970s. He wasn't like hugely successful, but he was, famous enough and kind of as a representative of India, which I don't think was considered a world power in tennis. He became relatively famous through that, and then sort of dabbled in acting and was in a James Bond movie. Octopussy, I think he was like an agent, like an intelligence operative, and wound up on What a Country somehow, playing somebody from Pakistan, which, given the traditional enmity between India and Pakistan, I think that's kind of an interesting choice.
Right. Yeah, that is interesting. And we have Ada Maris as Maria Conchita Lopez.
Yes, and she's sassy.
Yes, sassy housekeeper.
Yes. Not a maid, a housekeeper.
Yes, for someone in Beverly Hills.
Yes.
She does live in Beverly Hills. But
she's got upwardly mobile aspirations, I guess.
Julian, or maybe it's Julian Reyes as Victor Ortega, who's your Latino Lothario type.
Yeah.
Leela He Olsen as Young He, who's sort of she's not shy. She's naive.
I would say she just seemed to be kind of playing a little bit of a submissive Asian type.
Yes.
But yes, not necessarily shy, but she's eager. Naive, I think, is a good way to put it.
Yeah, and she works at the 7-Eleven.
Yes.
Teacher, Taylor Brown, is played by Garrett M. Brown, who is just recognizable as a character actor.
Yeah, I would describe him as a solid hand.
Yeah.
He seems like a good guy. He seems amiable enough. Seems like a nice guy, and then, again, kind of the everyman type. Not somebody like a charismatic guy that's going to carry a show.
No.
Not like a Joel McHale, like coming into Community or something like that, or a Howard Hessman.
No, and we didn't have either principal in this episode, but
no, we did not. That's right.
First 10 episodes, Gail Strickland played kind of xenophobic principal.
Yeah, kind of had semi-contempt for the whole notion of the class. It seems like.
Yeah, and then Don Knotts took over as
F.J.
Bud McPherson.
Yeah, and pretty much did what you'd expect later era Don Knotts to do in that role, I think.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Furley revisited.
Yeah, well, just being very, kind of playing up on the self-delusional aspects of the character and things. Yeah. Gail Strickland, before we go on, I've got to mention another show that she was on right before, I think, What a Country. Would you care to guess? It's one of our favorites. I'm smiling when I say that, but it's something that's come up many times on the show. We have not done a whole episode to it yet, but I think we're inching towards the season where we've got to do a whole episode of this show.
Whoa.
She was a regular on the show, I think the season before, like probably 1985, 86-ish. What a Country debuted in September of 1986. Yeah. So I think the previous season she had been on a network show.
No.
She was on The Insiders.
Oh, yeah.
Our favorite Miami Vice
ripoff.
Knockoff, yes.
Yeah.
So we've got to do that eventually, I think. We've got to find a way. If anybody listening has access to Insiders full episodes, let us know, because I'd love to do it.
Yeah.
One way or another. Maybe we could do a bonus episode or something.
Might regret that.
Well, I've said it. I put it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, before we get into the episode proper, I got my single favorite thing about this show is the faux Randy Newman theme song.
All right. I'm glad you mentioned that. I want to be an American.
And it's close enough that I knew it wasn't, but I was like, maybe it is.
Yeah, had to look.
Maybe he wrote it, and somebody, it was one of his songs, and they just re-recorded it.
But everything about that, and like the scenes that we see, it's clearly meant to be a Randy Newman type song, and it's totally wrong for I don't know. It doesn't fit with the tone of the show, I don't think. But the composer, I looked it up, and he's done
like
tons of
legit
stuff.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah.
When I looked him, it mentioned Perry Mason, but I think it was just the movies, right?
Yeah, I don't think he did the original.
Yeah, because he would have been really old.
And you can tell there's some youth and vitality into that.
Yeah.
That wry commentary on being an American that we get in the theme song.
Yeah, he did Perry Mason from 85 to 93. So.
Which wasn't probably that difficult a job. I mean, you got you add a few like 80s sounding instruments to it, little synth touches, and
it mentions like Police Story, which seems a little.
I thought I saw Diagnosis Murders.
Columbo, Father Dowling Mysteries,
wow,
Rockford Files, which I don't, and Hawaii Five-0, and Phyllis.
Phyllis.
I don't know. I mean, maybe he was helping.
Right. So some of these he might have been composing individual episodes without being involved in them.
Matlock, Jake and the Fat Man, and Diagnosis Murder.
Wow, he had quite a run.
Which I don't think I realized those were spin-offs of Matlock. Yeah, and he nominated 10 times for an Emmy, most recently in 1996.
Including For What a Country?
Oh, yeah. He won for no.
That might have been a case where being syndicated hurt What a Country in awards consideration.
Yeah.
It got unjustly neglected in the 1987 Emmy Awards.
Yes. My second favorite part of the show is in the end credits, where he's just humming it.
Oh, yeah. Which only adds to that.
Like it's the demo.
Yeah.
He didn't have the lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah, but it adds to that, like, kind of feeling tossed off, but not really feel of like a Randy Newman thing,
Yeah.
And it's like it's like wistful, So you'd expect the show to be kind of like. To be fair, like another episode I watched was about Yakov learning about credit cards, and it sort of did talk about the foibles of American culture, consumer culture. But yeah, the theme song is just totally like it's a lot classier than maybe the rest of the show. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
It's ambitious, I'll say that.
Yeah, and I mean I like Randy Newman, so he is easy to make fun of.
Yeah, it's just very when you put that on, especially if you didn't remember that was the theme song, and all of a sudden you hear that, and it's like, what is this Randy Newman? And that was hilarious. And let's say, I mean, if they told him to do a Randy Newman song, he did a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, he totally delivered. But the production values, this is like a syndicated show. We've talked about these shows in first-run syndication had lower budgets, and it really shows in this one, I think. The sets are kind of cheap, and it just kind of has a kind of a second-rate feel to it.
Yes. And the song does not, like, lyrically, it probably doesn't stand up to a lot of Randy Newman's.
No, I don't think so.
More ironic work.
Yeah, that's fair to say. Yeah.
Although, as we know from Toy Story, he can also do Ernest.
I think it's like it's just supposed to suggest maybe a level of irony, like the fact that it sounds like Randy Newman.
Right.
And like, okay, well, it sort of sets up the premise of the show, but
yeah, they do want to be Americans.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So this episode, which is called The Soul Man.
Yes.
Do we know when it aired? What?
October 4th, 1986.
Okay. It's a second episode?
It was a Saturday. Yeah, it's the second episode, and I think it was on Saturdays, at least on WPIX.
Okay.
Saturday evenings. So
I did enjoy I watched the one with the commercials too.
Yeah,
I enjoyed seeing those.
And that was cool. Saturday night, not a big thing, but a lot of these syndicated sitcoms would show up on weekends.
Yeah. And it opens in the classroom, and so we didn't talk about that, but like sitcoms or dramas that set in the classroom often do this, where you get a tiny bit of school, and then either in case of head of the class, they just start talking about stuff that has nothing to do with history, or it's some other part of the day, or like in this case, it's the end of class, and then you go off to the world outside of the classroom. But you get a little bit. So Taylor is trying to teach them about the Constitution and wants to know about the first 10 amendments. And Young-hee starts reciting the first 10 commandments.
Yeah.
This is the kind of...
That's a lot of the humor of this show, the malaprops and misunderstandings related to basic language.
Yes. And then, this makes no sense. He says, have fun on the weekend without breaking any of the amendments or the commandments.
Yeah.
Breaking the amendments? What? So make sure you don't use your right of free speech at all.
Yeah.
If you have a gun, don't bear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Etc. Yeah.
Yeah, that's something. Well, I think in this podcast we don't want people to break any amendments or or commandments. We've been talking about a little bit about American values in this episode, and I want to stress we don't encourage that.
Or does that mean if you're breaking an amendment, you would not use free speech, right?
Yes, I guess breaking an amendment would be, or would breaking an amendment be violating somebody else's right to free speech, maybe?
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah,
That's not good.
yeah. Well, either way, you generally don't want to break things.
No.
Maybe a record or two, not an amendment, and certainly not a commandment.
Certainly not a commandment. Wasn't there something about the seven dwarves? Like young he could name them.
Oh, yeah. Well, good for her.
Yeah. And Nikolai wants to go out for a few brewskis.
Yeah.
And, I thought Maria wasn't going, but then she does go. But she's watching her figure. Young he she's excited she gets to go to 7-Eleven and work the Slurpee machine.
By herself, yeah.
By herself. Which, maybe back then they had to operate the Slurpee machine for you.
Yeah, well, a lot of things weren't self-service those days. You could still get gas many places from an attendant. So, yeah, I think that's reasonable that they would keep the Slurpees behind the counter. And
yeah,
those are the good old days. Now we got to do everything. And we gained some independence, Mike, but I think we've lost something by having that, that great class of service workers that would do that for you and do it right.
Yeah, but then everybody's got to stand in line waiting for you to get a Slurpee.
Yeah, I guess you can have less employees and save money.
Or, the employees can focus on the cashier part of it.
Right.
And not the making the Slurpee part.
The Slurpee administration.
Yeah. Slurpee administration is a very important administration.
Yeah, it's very much so, yes.
Yes. And Robert says he cannot. And then Nikolai says, let your hair down. And that's another... I don't think it can go down any further.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand that.
No, it's just expression.
Even though earlier he was correcting people on expressions.
Yeah. Like the knowledge of idioms is very inconsistent in this class.
Yes. Victor is hitting on Maria, which I assume happens every episode. But they do go, they end up going, the four of them.
Yeah, to like the local bar.
And I remember the old guy, he doesn't go, and that's it.
It's not his scene.
Taylor briefly joins them for no reason, really.
Yeah, well, I guess it's probably like the one bar like right near the school or something like that. So. And
he's meeting some professor there who turns out to be a really attractive woman.
Yeah.
This other woman walks in, and the guys are all ogling her. And
yeah.
Robert says he doesn't feel confident to talk to women because when he was a prince, he had everything done for him.
Mm-hmm.
Which that's a decent detail.
Yeah.
Doesn't know what to do. But they sort of challenge him to go talk to this woman. So he does, and he clears his throat and then says popcorn.
Yeah.
And she assumes his name is Popcorn.
Yeah.
Which was kind of amusing.
Yeah.
But, and he's speaking in the royal we.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just weird. And she sort of enjoys the weirdness of him.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn later, maybe just because he's real.
He's genuine, yeah.
Yeah. And so she invites him for a drink later at the Club Wow.
Yeah, the Club Wow.
The Club what?
No, the Club Wow.
Oh, thank you.
Do you think Ken Berry was a silent partner in the Club Wow? Maybe. Well, he had the Ken Berry Wow Hour. Or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So maybe it was an homage to that show.
Maybe, yeah.
That'd be nice, like an urban bar in the middle of town. Apparently, Ken Berry happens to be a silent partner.
Right. And if you watch the episode carefully, he's in the corner.
Yeah,
somewhere.
Yeah, there's a cash
just
cow
sipping
for
a drink.
him.
And then I actually laughed quite a bit at Robert misspeaking. He says he's not going to go because they'll think he's a nard.
Yeah.
And Yakov very quickly is a nerd, and I had to pause it. And I don't think they meant me to laugh that much.
Well, they succeeded, I guess.
Yes, it was like one of two laughs in the whole episode.
Well, everybody's like super excited for him and saying, "Hey, this is your chance, man. She's inviting you. You got to go for this." And Yakov is. It's funny that like Yakov's character is like the most streetwise of any of them.
He's a cabbie.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
he's learned a lot driving the cab around.
Right.
Yeah,
he knows a lot about humans too. I think he seems to have he seems to maybe have the greatest emotional intelligence.
Okay. Which is interesting because part of his deal now in real life, Yakov Smirnoff is doing like self-help stuff.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And marriage counseling kind of stuff.
What?
Yeah, I think he got a master's degree or a PhD.
What?
Psychology. Yes.
All right, we'll have the crack research
is
team
real,
look into this.
yeah.
All right, I gotta investigate that.
And of course, he has Yakov Smirnoff's theater in Branson.
Yes. Do you think was Yakov Smirnoff ever in a Bud Light commercial? Because he
I
really
want to
should have
say
been.
yes.
He should have been. Yeah, I'll have to investigate that too. He would be a natural for that.
Yeah.
I'll have light. No Bud Light. But it would be like some kind of like a flare from a Russian officer's like gun or something.
Right.
An automatic weapon.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a Russian with a semi-automatic weapon firing it at everybody in the bar.
Oh,
And everybody ducks under, and he just like timidly pokes his head up. I'm like, no Bud Light.
In Russia, light beer is water.
Yeah, it would start out with him like in a bar maybe, and bars are a lot different in Russia.
Yeah.
Always have to be careful what you ask for. Or like a firing squad. That's what it would be. Like, can I have a light, and it'd be like somebody with like a last cigarette, and a firing squad all of a sudden popping up out of nowhere.
Yeah, this is very dark.
Yo, that's what it'd be. I've got it now. Okay. So people would come out from behind the bar. Somebody would hand him a cigarette, and there'd be you'd hear the clicking of a bunch of rifles aimed on him. Like, no Bud Light? Maybe this commercial, I apologize if this has already been done and I'm just imagining it. I might not be creating this, but that's what it would be.
I can't imagine that was done.
No, probably not. But I could imagine.
In something, or a Miller Lite commercial or something, yeah.
And this, like this kind of cheap bar set kind of reminded me of, the first one.
The first.
I mean, now the WoW Club, that's a whole nother story.
Yeah. Oh, and there was a thing where he's like teaching Robert how to get funky and be hep cat.
Yes, of course. The old gag, the classic gag of
And
basically a white guy teaching a black guy how to be black, quote unquote.
Yeah, but basically they're doing the like the wild and crazy guys thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Just bobbing their heads.
An exaggerated version of what they think girls think are cool is cool.
Yeah, and Robert does some weird like African dance, and that seemed a little much.
Although I don't want to spoil anything, but the studio audience seemed to love it.
Well,
they seem to go crazy for some of this physical comedy, these bits.
So they go to the club, and of course Nikolai's the only white guy there.
Yeah,
yeah. And there's some joke like Robert understands that.
Yeah.
Don't you feel out of place? And he's like, what? Because I'm only Russian?
Yeah. I gotta admit, I laughed at that one. There's something about some of the Yakov Smirnoff deliveries that I do laugh.
And they get drinks, and Robert's acting weird. He's trying to be cool and say babe and all this stuff. And so the woman who's, what is her name? I found it later.
I don't remember.
Yeah. It was like Janet or something.
Yeah.
Anyway, so she's not totally into that, and this club owner, Morris, who's like a player.
Yeah.
Thinks he's a player, is hitting on her and, and making fun of Robert. And then we kind of get to a scene later where there's a guy rapping. And Nikolai's standing there, and you just know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And it does.
You just hope it's going to happen. And it does. You're right. Yeah.
So he raps, and I wrote down the lyrics.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah, great.
I'm not going to rap them or do the accent, but you can imagine it's early years of rap, and it's, the beat,
the standard.
My name is blah and blah, blah, blah.
And I'm here to say.
Yeah.
My name is Nikolai, here to say.
Yeah.
I love America in a major way. But he's more than that. He's better than that. Off the top of his head, let's give him some credit.
Tonight was fun I had in your bar. I'm Nick Rostropovich from USSR. Here in this country can be what you choose. I choose to be wealthy as Howard Hughes. I could rap all night, for me it's no bother, but meet Robert Moboto, my righteous brother. And then Robert, no. I'd like to say hello to everyone, and I'm here to have quite an enjoyable time. I now will try my hand at rapping, and I'm going right into the toilet.
Okay, I have to admit, I laughed out loud when he did that. That rap was pretty funny. Robert's,
yeah.
Well, Nikolai's rap was just great. That's just good, solid rap music, the kind which they don't make anymore. Robert's rap actually made me laugh, I gotta say. And he did have kind of like a puzzled look, when nobody was reacting, when it went over flatly. Okay, that was the best part of the episode, in my opinion.
Yeah, other than the theme song.
You know what they should have had? They should have had a Randy Newman style rap in this part. Just some guy. Hey, does anybody else like to rap? And just some guy that sort of looks like Randy Newman come up and just like do like a cynical
froggy.
Yeah.
Then Morris is bothering Janet at the bar, like really to the point of being like really unpleasant.
Yeah.
And Robert steps in and he gives a big speech about how he's a prince and this and that, and he's being himself again. And he's a lion and this, and that he's willing to fight for her. And then you cut to them sitting behind the building with black eyes.
Yeah, and torn clothing.
Yeah.
Yep.
But didn't turn out great. But now Nikolai has a friend.
Yeah, that's one good thing that came out of it.
And then Janet comes out, and she's into Robert now, and he points out there's nothing more important than friends except women.
Yeah.
And that's the end, except for something you were alluding to during
ba,
the
ba, ba, ba. And then you hear, "What a Country" was taped before captive studio audience. Yeah.
I like that.
I think they do a different one each time, maybe.
Oh.
I think.
Yeah. There was a bumper in there, too,
that
I think Victor and Maria did the voice, or a couple characters did the voiceover.
Like, "What a Country" will be back in a moment.
Yeah, and then there was some bit. Yeah. He hit on her or something.
Yeah. Well, they were trying. They were trying when they made this, but I don't think it quite captured the heart of Americans.
Right. And I don't think we mentioned it's based on a British sitcom.
Ah, good point, yes.
The name of which I've already forgotten.
Mind Your Language or
Yes.
Mind Your... Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that was actually a successful British sitcom.
Right.
I guess they don't adapt too many failed British sitcoms, but maybe they do.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny because after I watched the pilot, like a bunch of I didn't realize that, but a bunch of those were coming up recommended on this site that I watched on, and I'm like, I don't even know what this is. It just said MYL, and
I was pleasantly surprised at how much of What a Country is available online for our viewing now, because I had looked before and couldn't find as much. But yeah, this was the episode, The Soul Man, and so what'd you think overall?
Yeah. I think you're the general. The cheapness of it and the stockness of it, and of course, there's like a similar show on NBC right now, Cal Penn, where he's like teaching immigrants, which I haven't seen, but so I don't know if it trades in the same sort of.
I believe it's been canceled already, or
okay,
at least not been renewed. So again, yes, I see some similarities. But okay, yes. Now
maybe a show like this, and maybe had the classes happen to some, if it were on longer, the characters would stop being their types.
I'd be curious. Obviously, not curious enough to actually have watched it, but I'd be curious how they do that nowadays, because you have to flesh out the characters. I think there'd be pressure to either cast them against type or establish right away through some kind of dialogue, like some other character would make it a stereotypical assumption, and then somebody else would shoot it down like, no, actually I have a PhD and and blah blah blah. So there's something kind of old fashioned about both these shows, but really What a Country, it's to me, it's amusing as the time capsule aspect. You got Yakov Smirnoff.
Yeah.
You got this kind of like the cheapness of the first run syndication. You've got the early rap thing, which was a pleasant surprise in the middle of this episode. So all these things kind of tie together, and especially watching a version of it with commercials really kind of made it. So I did enjoy it, but would I recommend it as a watch for those people out there that haven't seen it? Yes, I would.
Oh, okay.
I would recommend that you watch this episode because it has Yakov Smirnoff rapping.
Well, yeah, that is a good high point.
If you're into like
and again,
lesser known stuff,
the commercials are fun.
Yeah,
because a lot of them are local New York kind of commercials.
Yeah,
like there was one that it's like an electronics appliance.
Oh, the Dick Lewis is watching.
Yeah, right. It was so weird.
Yeah. It's like Lewis, and I forget the other name. It was like the name of the chain, but like this Dick Lewis character is apparently
he's
literally
watching for deals, but it seems like he's also watching people.
Yes, at the end they show his eyes moving at the top of this like billboard or big poster, and he's watching everybody.
And I think the first one in there was for some department store or something, and it was all about how all these outfits cost less than other objects that women own.
Ah, yes.
Like, so-and-so's outfit costs as much as an ounce of her favorite perfume.
Right. Well, I think I like it when we kind of delve into these more obscure shows. And this was a nice little journey and made a nice little thematic companion to Head of the Class.
Yes.
So I'm definitely glad we explored these. I would be very curious to hear what some of our listeners say about these shows, because it's possible, we weren't real high on Head of the Class either, but I know a lot of people really liked it, especially like in our age group, enjoyed it growing up. So yeah, I'd love to hear, why you liked it, and, how you felt about Billy Connolly joining the cast. And,
Right.
and if anybody remembers What a Country, I just love to hear that, period. That's enough. Like, hey, I watched What a Country.
Yeah, I would like to hear someone who, like, it was appointment TV for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I had to be home every Saturday night
Yeah.
for whatever, 16 weeks it was on.
Right. So both these shows, as we speak, are available online, but not really in an official video format. But you might want to check them out, and if you're in the mood for a classroom setting, these shows might scratch that itch.
Maybe you'll just feel nostalgia for school.
It could happen.
I think I hear the bell.
Yeah, I think we better get going. This episode brought to you by Stock Characters Limited for all your television classroom needs. This episode also brought to you by the Club Wow. Not the Club What? The Club Wow. This episode also brought to you by World Peace. Join us next time for another exciting episode of Battle of the Network shows. Learn more, leave feedback, and suggest future episodes at battleofthenetworkshows.com. Follow us on Twitter at BatNetShows, and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Battle of the Network Shows.